Hey guys, Carrie Matt for Daredevil Season 2, Episode 4, Penny and Dime, and oh my god, what an episode this was. I mean, this episode was incredible. Look, this season has been great. I've loved everything this season, but this episode was truly just perfect, honestly. I don't use this word a lot in TV, but this was a pitch perfect episode. It was stunning, it was gripping, it was shocking, it was everything I wanted from the show, and for me, is, I think, the best episode we've had of Daredevil so far, without a doubt. Amazing stuff in this episode. There were so many scenes that were hard to watch, and there's so many scenes that I'm like, that is an Emmy scene, that is an Emmy scene. There were so many scenes like that in this episode, and it was just such a great episode. It really did feel like a season finale or mid-season finale or something like that. But of course, it's only episode 4. So knowing we're already on episode 4, we're only on episode 4 and we're already getting an episode like that, really I think shows how amazing the rest of the season's going to be. Let's just get into this episode. There's so much to talk about and so much to get into. And I can't wait to dive into this episode because this was incredible. So what I love about this episode is the way that it starts, because it starts with this wake for the dead Irish mobsters, and we see this guy Seamus offers a toast to their fallen comrades. The fifth of one of the dead men, Finn, barges in, and he says that he caught the first flight when he heard what happened, and Seamus offers him a drink. And of course, we knew some of them. We knew, obviously, some of these Irish mobsters, but we really get a more focus on them here. And something I like is that Finn is a one-time character. He's only a character in this episode, but I think he's going to be one of the most memorable one-episode characters we've ever had in this show because of what he ends up doing, which we'll get into. But one of the underlings, Rory, brings Finn the drink. Finn goes to his son Kelly's coffin and says that he didn't want him to follow in his footsteps. Seamus reminds him that death is part of a deal, and Finn stabs him in the eye with an ice pick because he doesn't want to hear it. It's clear that Kelly was dead, and once Seamus is dead, Finn takes some pills. Rory offers him another drink. Everyone nods in agreement. So Seamus is dead, basically, already really crazy, and everyone nods in agreement, and Finn says he's going to get back the 1.2 million that Punisher took from him. We basically realize that Kelly was killed by Punisher. That's what's going on here, and that's why Finn wants to go after him. So soon the Irish mob hits the street. One bartender says he might have seen a gun. They go to the pet shop and question the owner, shoot him in the elbow when the owner doesn't talk fast enough, and the owner says the Punisher has a dog and he saw him walking it once, and basically this is their way to track Punisher by finding out he had a dog and everything. Finn and his men soon track Punisher to his apartment. They recognize the dog. They search the place for the money but find nothing. And keep in mind, guys, this is the first 4 minutes of the episode. We're 4 minutes in and we still have yet to see a single main character, and I was already riveted. Like, I'm already like, this is gonna be the best episode of this show, really. This was incredible. The mobsters go back to their car, taking the dog with them. Punisher watches from across the street as they do, knowing the risk that could really happen him. You really do see Punisher not as Punisher, but as Frank Castle. You really see him in this episode that way, and I love the way that was done. And Jon Bernthal in this episode, oh my god, if Jon Bernthal doesn't get some sort of Emmy nomination after this episode, I don't know what's wrong with the TV world, because he definitely deserves it after this episode. He was incredible and so subtle as well. That's something I love, is that he's playing this character so subtly, but so emotionally, and he's doing it so well, and I love that. So then we get the scene, finally we get a scene where we see main characters. Like I said, the first 4 minutes, we hadn't seen a single main character, and it was already very riveting. Just knowing the story, knowing that they're going after him, and that he knows that they're going to come after him, and he's going to try to do every he can to get away from them. Already very riveting. But then we actually get to, what this episode, what's really going on here, because we see Matt, and Matt is kind of a supporting character in this episode. Like, he is a big part of this episode, but this definitely, without a doubt, is Frank Castle's episode. Without a doubt, this is his episode, and not to say that Matt, he is obviously the main character and the big vocal point of this, but this is without a doubt, like I said, time to see how great of an actor and how amazing of a character Punisher can really be. So Matt's dressing when Karen comes by his apartment to pick him up, and this episode also gives us by far the most interaction that Matt and Karen have ever had, and I love seeing it. She helps him with his tie, asks if he's okay. Matt says that he's recovering, and Karen assumes that he's talking about his supposed alcoholism, and at this point, she seems to believe him. She seems to think he's legit about it, and they both talk around the subject. Karen mentions a brother, but doesn't provide any details, and we know that something is definitely going on with Karen. She's definitely hiding something. We don't know what it is, but we definitely start to get that feeling that there's definitely something going on with her she's hiding. So you go to the church where Father Lansom's holding a service for Grotto, and I like the way the scene was done. Again, not a huge scene, but just Father Lansom's performance and his passion and what he said in his speech. I mean, it was so powerful. He talks about how he sought and failed to find redemption and how Grotto came to him and he really couldn't do anything. I mean, it's really sad to think about that Grotto died, and we've realized that Matt, Foggy, and Karen are the only ones in attendance because they're the only ones that didn't think Grotto was this terrible man. You can see that Grotto really had no allies, and even though he probably had some, they can't come to his funeral or whatever, and it's just really sad to think about that they were the only ones that really backed up this guy. They didn't really see him as this criminal. They saw him as a guy who wanted to get out of this life, but he couldn't, and unfortunately, it was just too close of a call. So it's very sad to think about. But once Lantom is done, Matt assures Karen that Grotto didn't die alone. He asks his friends to go on without him, then thanks Lantom for his words. And we get this great scene between Lantom and Matt. We've had great scenes between these two before. That's nothing new. We know how great the Lantom and Matt scenes are. But for me, I think this was probably the strongest Lantom and Matt scene. Just Lantom's point and Matt's points were both very clear here. The priest says that funerals are for the living, and Matt says that Grotto's death wasn't his fault, even though he feels that it is. He explains that there's a new man in town killing people, and Lantom says that at least Matt tried to save Grotto, because he did. He really wanted to save Grotto. He didn't want him to die, and that's the thing that Matt should focus on, which Matt's not focused on. He's focused on the fact that he thinks that he's this, cold-blooded killer that, you're not really cold-blooded killer, but he thinks that he let Grotto die, and I like that Lantom saying, look, at least you tried to save him. And Matt finally says he's looking for forgiveness for nothing, for not doing more, and he feels like he should have done more. Like, he really could have done more here, but he didn't. And Lantom is sure that he did everything that he could. The priest says that guilt is how someone's soul tells them that something is wrong, and it means that Matt's work is not finished. And it's a very powerful scene. You really see him saying, look, even though you took on the Punisher, you're far from over. You have to figure out how to come back from this, and that's really what it's all about. And that really is true. When you do something wrong, you got to make it right. And that's what Matt has to do. He has to make it right. A very powerful scene between Lantom and Matt. And you really see that Lantom really understands what Matt's going through. And I really like seeing that. The scenes between these two have always been great. But just something about this scene I loved. So at his mobile van, Punisher stitches up his wounds, contemplates the case with the money, and we don't really know what's going on. We know that obviously the mobsters want money from him, but we don't really know what's going on there. And at the law office, Karen shows Foggy Matt the file that Reyes has, including Punisher's skull x-ray, and she suggests that Blake gave her the file because Reyes is trying to cover up something about Punisher, and her best at protecting themselves is to find the vigilante, because obviously Reyes, we know, can't be trusted, and Karen said this before, that there's definitely something going on with Reyes, and Reyes doesn't have a whole lot to do here, but yeah, definitely there's something going on with her. She's definitely very shady, and they need to try to find him, and Foggy steps out to take a call. Karen admits that Lansom's eulogy got to her, and it really made her think about a lot of things, and Matt figures that she cares about Punisher, and Karen explains that she's curious about the man and figures that there's more to the story. He tells her that she's compassionate, and Foggy calls Matt and reminds him that they have clients. They have to file for their new client today, and they realize that Karen is left with the Punisher files, and she wants to do this on her own. She wants to figure out more about the Punisher, but not so much about the Punisher. What she wants to find out more about is the man behind the Punisher, Frank Castle. So Foggy tells him to find Frank first, and that's what he needs to do. He needs to find him, and Karen's going to get the information while Matt goes to find him. So later, Daredevil visits Melvin to get his repaired suit. The Terror boosts about the armor improvements and says that there are some new people spilling blood in the streets, and Melvin reveals that he's wearing a bulletproof vest to stay strong for his girlfriend Betsy, and again, it's not a huge scene, but it just shows how dangerous the world's become. I mean, even his tailor, the person that makes his suit, is still terrifying. It's crazy to think about that the world is as bad as it is, and he's worried that he could get shot at any minute, because we know that when these gangsters go after someone, they mean business, and especially if, he has connections to the Punisher, things like that. I mean, who knows what could happen, and he's very worried every waking moment. I mean, it's a very crazy thing to think about, but just knowing that he has this constant fear in him, I mean, it really is crazy. So I love the way that scene was done. Karen then tracks down George Bach, who's working as a journalist. She asks why he was fired from Metro General, offers to buy the man coffee, and George explains that he was with Frank when the x-ray was taken, and he was admitted as a John Doe. Very powerful scene here. You really do start to see more what's going on with Frank here. Some people in suits and earpieces came to see the patient from time to time. They pushed for Punisher's DNR, and he died for a minute before coming back. Then he grabbed George and told him to take him home, and George did so, even though he knew that he would get him fired, and Karen asks for the address. So you can really tell that George really does care for, Frank. Even though Frank, could have gotten him fired, he didn't care. He wanted to help him. He wanted to do something good, and I like seeing that. So Karen asks for the address, knowing that she has his information. She wants to know more what's going on. She wants to find his hospital records, things like that. So very interesting reveal. I love the way that was done. There are a lot of really great reveals about Punisher in this episode because, let's face it, Punisher was definitely starting to be revealed in episode 3. This is the episode where we find out pretty much everything we need to know about this character, and I love that. So Frankston's in the streets, sits in the park, and looks at the carousel and the children on it. And this doesn't seem like a very important scene, but we understand why it becomes very important a little bit later on, which we'll get into. So once it stops, the lights go out. Punisher sits in the darkness, continues staring at it. He notices Rory sitting nearby. Rory flashes his gun, more mobsters out of the shadows, and Rory asks Punisher if he's going to come with them or make a mess. Frank disarms him. Rory manages to jab him with a syringe, and as Frank takes him as a shield, Rory yells to his men not to shoot because they want Punisher alive. The vigilante guns them down. Finn and more mobsters step out, and obviously you can tell that, he's willing to take them out, and Punisher starts to pass out, and you realize that he has no power against them, which is why this episode is so hard to watch. I mean, we've seen Punisher take guys out, and not really think much of it. Like, this is what he does. He takes out the people that he feels need to be killed. The problem is he has no power against them whatsoever. Finn thanks him for thinking out the ranks. His men taser Punisher, and he finally goes down, and it is just crazy to think about what's going on there. Just the fact that this is going on with Frank and he's in this situation is insane. I couldn't believe what was going on in this episode, and it was really hard to watch. That's not the scene that almost made me tear up. We'll get into that. There are many scenes in this episode that are like that. So later, Brett is checking out another Hell's Kitchen shooting. Here's some moving in the next room. It's Daredevil who asks what happened, and Brett says that the Irish put a bounty on Punisher's head, tells Daredevil to stay out of it because he's the problem, and Daredevil insists that they're on the same side, but Brett warns him that he's on his own side, and that he's not really on Daredevil's side. But the sergeant gets a call about shots fired at the carousel, and by the time he turns back from answering it, Daredevil is gone. He's going to take action on his own, and Brett doesn't want to do anything, so Daredevil's going to do it. And I like Daredevil's point in this episode that really, when it comes down to it, Brett is on his side. They both want the same thing, which is to condemn Punisher. That's what they want to do, and even though Brett's not admitting it, he is on the same side. And I understand that Brett doesn't necessarily agree with what's, the way that Matt does things. I understand that. But we do know that, we do know that basically what's going on with him is it's very interesting to see what's going on there, and I can't wait to see what happens with that. So I like the way they really compared what the cops are doing to what Matt is doing. That's a big part of this episode as well. So Karen takes a taxi to the address and finds a home in the suburbs. The name Castle is on the mailbox, and she breaks in because she knows that it's home, and she obviously wants to find out more there. So Daredevil arrives at the carousel first, finds the bodies of the dead Irish. Rory's there crawling away. Daredevil disarms him, then asks who did it. The vigilante tortures him until Rory says that Punisher did it, and he promises the Punisher is good as dead when they're done with him. Daredevil repeats his question because he knows that he's not responsible for this. He knows that there's definitely something more going on with Punisher, and something like that I think Matt's realizing that he's not a bad man. Like, even though Frank does bad things, he's not a bad guy by any means, and he's realizing that they've taken him away and that they've stopped him from doing what he wants to do. So then we get this scene that I think is probably the most graphic scene we have seen in any Marvel thing. I mean, sure, there were some graphic scenes in the show, with Matt beating people to a pulp or whatever. Even with Wilson Fisk stomping on someone's head like a pumpkin, there was nothing as devastating, as tragic, and as disturbing as this next scene. This entire thing was so hard to watch, and I couldn't believe we actually were seeing this, because we're talking about a man like the Punisher here. He's a man that punishes people that he feels have to be punished, and he doesn't care how he does it. He's going to try to punish them in any way he can. If it means to kill them, then by all means he has to do that. That's how he does things. Here, he has no power over them, and he's realizing that. He wakes up tied to a chair. Finn tells him that he's dying that night. However, he gives him the chance to die with his arms and legs attached, and has another man start beating Punisher. Once he's done, Finn sends his men out and then asks where his money is, and when Punisher doesn't answer, Finn beats him, figures that he's seeking retribution. Punisher agrees agrees to tell him where the money is, only to lure him in close enough to headbutt the mobster. Finn calls his men back, has them hold Frank down while he applies a power drill to Frank's legs. Oh, I could not watch that. Like, the power drill, I'm like, no, I can't watch this. I could not watch it. It was so hard to watch, so disturbing, and I really do applaud the show for going there, though, because, again, it does show that Frank is not invincible. He's not going to get out of everything as easily as he wants to, even though he thinks he can get out of it. This is not something that's going to be easy for him to get out of, and I definitely like seeing that. It's disturbing to watch, obviously, but, again, you really do see that he's not going to get out of this alone. So Karen searches the house and discovers that it's abandoned. She finds children's toys, goes upstairs, unaware that she set off a security system. There's a child's bedroom and photos of Punisher Frank Castle with his son and daughter. And there's also photos of medals belonging to Frank, and she's realizing really what he's going on. He really is this family man. He does have this family. He did have this life. But it's clear he hasn't been to this house in, years probably, and it's definitely been abandoned, and it's definitely I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going on there. I like finding out more about Frank with that because it really gives us more insight, which I definitely like. But it never felt like an orgy of evidence. If you guys know what that is, an orgy of evidence is when they show you a bunch of like newspaper clippings or things on Google, things like that, and they don't directly tell you what's going on. They basically just show you a bunch of things and be like, oh, there's your reveal. That's not what this felt like. What it did feel like is that it showed that Frank is a family man, that he does care about people, and he has reasons for doing what he's doing, and that he does have a past, and I like seeing that. So very good the way they did that, and I definitely really enjoyed that. In many ways, I think Frank's not a villain. I think they really showed in this episode. Even though Frank is supposedly the main villain this season, he's really not, because he really does have reasons for doing what he's doing, maybe even stronger than what Wilson did. I mean, Wilson just wanted to make the city great again. That's really what it was with him. Punisher does things that he feels is right, and even though Matt has this moral code, what Punisher is doing is not necessarily wrong. Yeah, he's kind of crazy, but you can understand why, and you really do understand why he's so disturbed in this episode. So Daredevil picks off the mobsters in the hallway outside where Frank is being kept. Meanwhile, Frank still doesn't give up the money. Finn brings in the dog, promises to do double to it, and he's literally going to shoot this dog, which now we understand why Finn wanted to find the dog, because he's literally going to say, look, you're either going to give me the money or I'm going to shoot your dog right then and there. Which is just as bad as what he was going to do with that power drill. So Punisher tells him the money's in his van, gives Finn the address, because he basically realizes that he has no choice. He needs to give him the money, and he's not going to add this unless he gets it. So the mobster takes the dogs out. Finn tells Punisher that he'll keep him alive until he has the money. He then calls his men and tells him to get the money. As he leaves, Punisher works on the bandage on his arm, and he wants to get out of this. He doesn't want to have to, die. He really does want to get out of this situation. So Daredevil takes out more of the mobsters. Two of Finn's men go to the van, open it, spot the case, and I mean, Daredevil was going really hard. Like, he was beating them to a pulp because he knows that they've not only stopped him from tracking down Punisher, they've stopped him from being able to talk to Punisher and really reason with him, because that's what Matt wants to do. He doesn't want to kill Punisher, obviously. We know he's not going to kill. What he does want to do is make things right, and this is the only way he can do that. So Frank then pulls out a razor blade out of the bandage because he needs to find a way to get that bandage off his arm. The mobsters open the case to confirm the money's inside. One of them spots something beneath the money, and the case explodes, and Punisher cuts himself free, cuts the thread of the mobster guarding him, takes the man's gun, shoots Finn in the shoulder as he tries to leave, and you see that he really did plan this. Like, he knew they were coming after him, and he planned this out, and it's really crazy to see. Once he's free, Punisher grabs a shotgun, prepares to shoot Finn. First, he asks who was there and killed his family. Finn doesn't care. Punisher shoots him in the face, and we realize his family was killed. And that's a big thing that's going on with Frank in this episode, that, in fact, his family was killed. And I was wrong. Finn did have a son, but it had nothing to do with Punisher. He just died, we are to assume. Maybe Punisher killed him, I don't know, but Finn doesn't care about Punisher's personal life. He just wants the money, and he's a gangster that wants things done. And Punisher shoots him in the face, which just, it feels like such a relief. I mean, what this guy was doing to him psychologically, emotionally, he wasn't the Punisher. He was vulnerable. He was unstable. And just the torture that he went through, even though it was only 5 minutes, just knowing what he was going through and knowing what he had to do and knowing that he couldn't do anything, just the fact that he was able to shoot him right then and there, I was very happy about it. It was very rewarding. And I definitely love the way that paid off. So more mobsters arrive, open fire. Punisher takes cover behind a panel, returns fire. And as they move in, Daredevil takes them out. Punisher's ready to make them pay, but Daredevil tells them not that night. When the mobsters run into two vigilantes, take them out, and Punisher prepares to shoot one of them. Daredevil disarms him with a baton throw, and I like that while these two are fighting, they're also kind of teaming up because they're both doing the same thing. They're both trying to take out these mobsters while also fighting each other, which it's a very powerful scene. And yes, I will say the rooftop scene was a more engaging fight scene, but this was just as amazing because, like I said, they're not only fighting mobsters, they're fighting against each other, but really they're fighting with each other as well for the same reason. So Punisher tries to hit him with the baton, but Daredevil knocks it outside, then punches him when he tried to kill a mobster with his bare hands, and basically you knew that he had to get him out at some point. You knew that he had to take him out because he needs to talk to him, and obviously he wants this to stop. So Karen finds lawn-dead flowers sent by well-wishers. A van drives by. Karen hides in the shadows until it passes. There's another photograph of Frank, his wife, and their 2 children at the carousel. The van drives slowly by again, then parks outside. Men in suits get out, and Karen backs away. She doesn't know who these men are, but obviously they have a very suspicious agenda, and she doesn't really want to know what's going on there. And then we get the scene. Look, this entire episode was amazing. It was. I was still really loving this episode, but this was the scene that I just thought, this is truly a masterpiece. This is an incredible work, and just the way this scene was done. Not only was this the best scene of this season so far, I think it's personally the best scene we've had in Daredevil. And yeah, there is a lot of exposition in this scene, but you really do feel this emotion. We see Matt, he carries Frank to the cemetery, sets him down, and he pretty much tells him everything that's going on with him, which I love that he finally did this. It not only relieves Matt, like Matt's kind of like, alright, I understand why you did this, but it also shows why Frank is the man he is, and you really do see that. So Frank admits that he was wrong about Daredevil being a pussy, that Daredevil does fight dirty, and even though he doesn't kill, he is gonna kill, he is gonna take out some people if he has to, and he's realizing how powerful he really is, and he tells Daredevil to go because he's past saving, and you realize that that's really what Matt wanted to do. He didn't want to kill him. He wanted to save him. He wanted, Frank to realize that there's more to life than killing. But Daredevil asked what the rhyme was that Frank muttered each time they pulled the trigger. And Frank is surprised that he heard it and explains that that is one batch, two patch, penny and dime, which we know, of course, was the title of the episode. And it's also the title of his daughter's favorite book, and he talks about how he survived the war, got home, was reunited with his family despite his fears that God would put it all out from under him because, of course, PTSD and what have you, things like that. It obviously was very hard for him to be in this war. It definitely made him think about a lot of things, and it's just very interesting to think about, knowing what Frank was going through and everything. Frank then cried, but his daughter didn't. She didn't cry. They went, and in many ways, he said that she was the one that held him up. She kept him up, and it's a very powerful scene. And they went home, and his daughter asked him to read his favorite book. Even though she was too old for it, Frank said that he was too tired and promised to do it the next day. But there was no next day for his daughter, his wife, and son. The next time he saw her, he was holding her body in his arms. His family was murdered, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. His family was the only thing keeping him up, and now, ever since then, he's been a broken man, and you really do understand that. But something I loved is that Jon Bernthal didn't go big with this scene. Like, he really did this in a very subtle way, because you can tell this is a man that's broken. He really is broken, and he doesn't want to reveal what's going on. It's very hard for him to reveal, but he needs to reveal this, and he needs to tell the story. It really gets him over what he's doing. It's a very powerful scene. I love the way that was done. Amazing stuff overall, and just Jon Bernthal, he honestly had me on the verge of tears. When we heard about what happened to his daughter and everything, you really see how much this man cared for his family, and maybe he wasn't a vigilante. Obviously, probably after his family died, that's when he decided to be a vigilante, but before, he was just a family man trying to do the right thing. Worried that things would go bad, but he was just trying to do the right thing, and I love seeing that. And it really makes me interested in getting a lot more of Punisher. Even though this seems like this is the last we're going to see of him for a while, I'm sure we are going to see him again, because this does set up some very interesting stuff with his character. I love the way this was done, and like I said, had me on the verge of tears. But I do feel we've gotten pretty much everything we need to know. Like, we don't need to know anything else. We've already known everything we need to know. And what I love is that this wasn't a flashback episode. Like, we had that flashback episode with Wilson last year telling us every little thing that happened to him, and this was pretty much that condensed into like 4 minutes, and they did that so well, the way that was handled. We didn't need all these flashbacks. All we needed was this scene for Frank to tell us what's going on. It's a lot more effective, and yes, I know show not tell is the best thing to do, but with something like this was something that Frank personally went through, and something that only he could tell, and the way that he did it was just so effective. I love that scene. Amazing stuff, and just that scene, like I said, almost had me on the verge of tears. So Brett and his partner arrive. Daredevil turns Frank over to him. While Brett's partner checks on Frank, Brett handcuffs Daredevil, and Daredevil tells him to take cover because it has to be him. He needs to get involved. He wants the police to do something. The police want to get involved. They need to step up and actually do something. He insists the people have to know the system works and that the police are in charge. And yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, in the city, they are not just some random cops. They are the NYPD. They're supposed to be the biggest, they're supposed to be the law enforcers. They're not really acting that way. And I understand they don't have as much power, but it's clear that Matt wants them to have that power, and I love the way that was done. After a moment, Brett releases Daredevil, tells him to go, telling him that whatever he isn't Punisher, and that's the guy they want. They need to bring down Punisher. He's going to jail, but this definitely is not the last we see him. Even though it seems that way in this episode, it's definitely not the last we've seen him. I know we're going to see him again. Jon Bernthal is too good to only do this role for 4 episodes, and I don't know how we're going to see him again or what capacity, but we are definitely going to see him again. I can't wait to see how that plays out. But I love the way this scene was done because Matt's not just bringing Frank to justice. That's not what he's doing. This is not about let's bring Frank to justice. It's about the cops getting to be cops because they haven't really acted that way. They've acted like everyone else is superior to them, and Daredevil's tired of acting that way. He wants the cops to show that they do play a major role and that they do get to make decisions, that they do think things through, and that they are smart. They're not stupid like many people think they are, and I love the way that was done. So, very good scene. Later, Matt, Foggy, and Karen go to Josie's for drinks, and on the news, an anchor's talking about how Brett arrested Frank, and again, this really feels like a season finale, just the way this was done. Foggy figures him out was involved, and Karen points out that Reyes will have trouble making a reputation for herself prosecuting a psychopath, and the friends share a toast to Brett in a safe Hell's Kitchen, and Foggy, now they know obviously it's not going to stay that way, but for right now it's that way. So Foggy goes to get the next round. Matt asks Karen if she's okay, and we get this great scene between Matt and Karen. Remember how I said that I don't want them to get together until she finds out his secret? Honestly, after this, I'm fine with them getting together and then her finding out his secret. I really think that's what's going to happen, that maybe she's not going to care as much. So Matt asks Karen if she's okay. She says that everything that happens reminds her of how precious life can be, and Matt takes her hand, and I really think that this, realizing what Frank is going through has really grown her. Like, she's really understanding what this all means, and after a moment he asks about her brother. Karen says that he's sweet. Foggy watches from across the bar smiling, and we don't know what happened to to Karen's brother. We don't really hear a lot about it, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it as the episodes go on, but this episode, that's all we hear about. So there's definitely something going on there. We don't know what it is. We'll have to see what that is. But after a few more rounds, Matt leaves. Foggy jokingly warns him to be careful about ending up happy, and Karen joins them. Foggy heads home. She offers to walk Matt home and takes his hand. They head off together. When they reach Matt's apartment, Matt traces his finger along the raindrops in Karen's arm. Literally every single bit of raindrop on her arm, which is a very interesting scene the way this was done. I kind of saw this as Matt just realizing what he's going through, and it also reminds us that Matt is blind and what he has to do when he's blind. It's a very powerful scene. He leans forward and they finally kiss. It seems like they weren't going to, but they do kiss here. And then he invites her to dinner the next day, and Karen immediately agrees, and while this is a good thing, this could have very bad consequences for them. 1, because of Matt being the Daredevil. 2, because of what happens next. Because they bid each other goodnight. Matt goes up to his apartment. A woman's waiting for him, greets Matt by name. He recognizes the voice and says her name, Elektra. Yes, Elektra is going to be in the next episode, which I kind of predicted. It seemed like that was the direction to go, because we haven't seen Elektra yet. And they did hint at Elektra being in the show, but now Elektra's coming back. Punisher's gone. Elektra's in. I can't wait to see what happens there. But overall, guys, such an amazing episode. Everything about this was just incredible. The emotions were great. The acting was great. The action was great. Everything about the show was just amazing. Everything about it. I loved every minute of this episode. It's going to be very hard for them to top this episode. I mean, everything about it was just perfect. And I don't care that this could be the end of the Punisher. I really don't. That's not what matters to me. The fact that it's in the end, I know this isn't the end. That's the thing. I know for a fact this is not the end of the Punisher. What this is a good way to get rid of him for now, definitely. And the way that that's being handled, I definitely really love the way they did that. I really think that Frank is really going to think more about what he's doing, and maybe he is going to learn something from Daredevil, but very interesting way that's going on. What happened between Matt and Elektra? It's clear that they have a past. It's clear that Matt wants nothing to do with her, and we don't know what happened between these two, but definitely something happened there. What it is, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what happened between Matt and Elektra. That's something I'm most looking forward to, and they already picked the perfect person to play Elektra. We already know, we saw from the trailer and everything, she's going to be an amazing Electra. I can't wait to see how she complicates things, and also how this complicates things between Matt and Karen, because Karen's gonna know there's something going on, obviously. If he keeps getting away, I mean, Matt's gonna have to tell her, and I feel like at some point she's gonna find out, and Matt's gonna have to tell her what's going on. He can't keep the secret from her for that much longer. Even though she is starting to believe the whole alcoholic thing, and she doesn't seem to suspect anything, I do think deep down she feels maybe there's more going on. I mean, Karen's, like I said, she's a smart girl, she's not stupid. I feel like she knows more what's going on there. So very interesting. I like the way that was done. And I like the way of developing Karen and Matt. It doesn't seem forced. It seems like now's the time to do it. Like, we had scenes with them here and there last season, but we really didn't get a scene like we did in this episode, and I really love the way that was done here. Amazing stuff overall. I also love the scene between Daredevil and Brett, just the way he's getting Brett to get involved more. I really love that. The way that was done, just amazing stuff overall. And just everything that they did between what they did with the Punisher and the way that they closed out his arc, and the way, well, kind of closed out his arc, but also showed that there is still room for him, which I love seeing. Just everything about this episode was great. Also, what is going on with Karen's brother? It's clear that there's something that happened with her brother. She doesn't want to talk about it, and I think it's very interesting to see what's going to happen there. We know there's something that happened. What it is, I don't know. Definitely interesting to see what happened with Karen's brother, because, like I said, she doesn't seem to talk about it much, but it seems to be very important, so I'm sure we'll find out at some point. But overall, guys, amazing episode. I don't know how they're going to be able to top this episode. By far, best episode of the entire show so far, definitely. I do think they're going to top this episode at some point, but it's going to be very hard to this season. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Absolutely loved it, and we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for episode 5 of Daredevil, because I am going to watch the next episode, which is Elektra's episode, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.